Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional, an old friend from Singapore and New Delhi, from USA, Mr. Sangeet Chowfla. Sangeet, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Sangeet is the former Chief Executive Officer of GMAC, which is the Graduate Management Admission Council. He's a board member and an advisor. He was earlier with several tech companies like IBM, HP, and others. So Sangeet, before we start talking of GMAC, tell me about your own journey in brief.
Well, I've been incredibly fortunate, Ashutosh. I've had an eclectic sort of career, maybe somewhat driven by non-traditional choices, which has been exciting. Started off life in India, got an MBA from FMS in Delhi. And at that point in time, the cool jobs, and we're talking about 1980 now, were in places like the multinational banks and the multinational companies. And I had offers from ICI, Chartered Bank, Nestle, but I chose instead to get into the computer business, which was nascent at that particular point of time. IBM had just been driven out of the country and had given up its operations to its employees, forming a company called IDM. I joined that because it just sort of seemed cool. Fascinating learning experience. Started life as a shoe leather kind of burning salesman. But not much was happening in India at that point of time. It was a closed economy. A friend of mine got a job in Dubai and said they were looking for salespeople. And I said, why not? I was young and single, I had nothing else to do. Dubai at that point in time was very different than Dubai today. I'm talking 1981. It was 1983, I think. It was just a fraction of the size there, a little village actually, but an interesting opportunity. And then from there, I got sort of a job offer from Hewlett-Packard to join its Mediterranean and Middle East operations out of Athens, Greece. And, what's wrong with living in Athens, Greece when you're in your 20s, right? So I jumped at that. Got an opportunity to start HP's operations in Turkey and Egypt, which for a 20-some-year-old was really exciting. And then I moved to Germany, which was HP's European headquarters. But for marketing, I ran the dealer part of their printer business for a number of years. Moved to Singapore to run HP's printer and storage operations for Asia Pacific. That's when you and I first met, I remember. And ended up in the US to start up HP's inkjet media business, which was a small division, and then we grew it rapidly.
Amazing.
And around the 80s, I'd lived my life in an airplane, and either I burnt out or I'd be the principal, I don't know what, but I decided enough's enough. And after, some 20-some years in the corporate sector, 18 years in HP, I decided to leave and I went over and joined the dark side. So at that point in time, I moved back to India after a period of time, worked for Bharti, and that's when I got recruited for GMAC. And, when the headhunter called, my first response was, why me? I'm a tech executive. Why, this is a management education thing. I don't come from the world of standardized testing or from management education. But as I reflected upon it, and as they explained to me, they were looking for somebody to lead the organization into a new phase of global growth. And one of the things that I'd really done was, lived around the world, managed new products and diversification. And I've been doing that for the last 10 years.
Amazing. So, the work that you have been doing with the Graduate Management Admission Council, there's a huge interest in India amongst the young. So let me start by asking you, what is the role of the Graduate Management Admission Council in the field of graduate management education?
So, the way I used to explain my role to business school deans was to think of me as the chief marketing officer of the industry.
Okay.
So we do two things. One is we promote the values of business education around the world. Just basically we own things like MBA.com, for example, which is the most visited website in business education. So we sort of sell the category, if you will. The second is we are the primary organization chartered with recruiting talent, evaluating talent and recruiting talent. So we develop demand for management education, but we also help students in business schools find what we call the right fit, the right match. At any one point of time, there's about 2.2 million people who are around the world who are trying to get into business school. And there's about 27,000 business schools which are trying to recruit them.
Wow.
And in some ways, I think of ourselves as what in India would be called Shadi.com or Match.com.
Yeah.
We put students and we take business schools and we get them together for that first meeting.
Amazing.
And then after that, of course, we hope there's a lasting relationship that comes out of it.
How amazing. How amazing. And, you gave me some very interesting numbers. 2.2 million students, 27,000 management schools. What is the kind of ratio that actually works in terms of how many students actually make it to these management schools?
So we like to think that there's a business school for everybody.
Okay.
That's a little bit of a mantra, and our job is to help people navigate their way to the business school that's the right one for them. Unfortunately, and I do mean it's unfortunate, that business education suffers from a very strong brand effect. And this particularly very strong in India when you're looking at international education. Students have, they're the usual suspects, the Harvard, Wharton, Stanfords, et cetera, of the world, which have very high selectivity ratios, right? So a relatively small proportion of people who apply to them actually get in. But there is capacity for quality management education for, I wouldn't say all people because there are many barriers that come in the way, but for most students to find something that actually ends up working for them. Once you start navigating your way through the brand halo and start looking at the global opportunity of business education, not just a US MBA, for example.
Very interesting. And, you've led GMAC for 10 years. What are some of the key trends or emerging areas of interest in graduate management education that you have seen that will shape the future?
Yeah, there's probably, that's a great question and something I think about a lot. And I've been writing a series of columns in Poets and Fonts about, and I really think about 5 different things that are happening.
Right.
One is globalization. And I know right now we are in a sort of anti-globalization sort of narrative in the world because of political events. But
correct.
Globalization is sort of, it may change, but it's here to stay. But in business education, there's another effect of globalization that's in play. And I'll give you a statistic to make my point. In the year 2000, which is not very long ago when you think about higher education, if you looked at the Financial Times ranking of the top 50 global MBA programs, 42 were based in the US, 8 were based in Europe, none were based in Asia.
Wow.
Last year, that 42 in the US became 24. The 0 in Asia became 12, and the rest were Europe. Now, not because US schools became any worse, it's just that everybody else has caught up. So, there's globalization of opportunity for students around the world. The other big shift is a move away from that shareholder model, which is that business is all about profit and shareholder maximization, the Milton Friedman theory, towards a more stakeholder-oriented model. You can put it in this wrapper of sustainability, responsibility to communities. We are teaching much more about that. And we are attracting candidates who are excited about that opportunity, not just about being a bond trader and making a boatload of money and stuff like that. So that's an important one. The other is, of course, the use of technology, both from a way education is delivered, more online content, etc., but also teaching students how to be comfortable to working with technology. You don't have to be a technologist yourself. You just have to know how to use technology.
Mm.
And of course, we've heard a lot about data and AI, et cetera. So that's
Sure.
the third trend. And coming out of that is the opportunity to think about business education not as a point of time.
Mm-hmm.
I pay my 2 years of dues and I get an MBA, but as a lifelong process that you can go through, because the world is changing so fast. What I learned back in FMS in 70 something is no longer that relevant today, right? From a fact point of view. So I got to keep the point is not to teach you facts, but teach you how to think about the world of business and the world about leadership. And how do I do that as a longitudinal sort of journey around the world?
Mm-hmm.
And the last, and this is a point which I actually disagree with, but it's a trend, is this trend towards specialization.
Right.
More and more we are finding that people want to get, you want to get a degree in data analytics, or you want a degree in a very specialized field that prepares you for a job. But I wonder whether long-term that actually benefits, because I think one of the beauties of business education is it teaches you to think very broadly.
Mm-hmm.
The MBA is fundamentally a generalist degree.
Correct.
And I have a little bit of a problem about a specialized MBA. It's a contradiction in terms.
Well said. Great response. Thank you. And, what, in your opinion, are some of the challenges faced by international students pursuing graduate management education?
Yeah, well, we do a lot of work with cross-border business education, as a matter of fact. So that's an area of great interest. One of it is a lack of adequate information.
Mm-hmm.
I think people, and that leads to the brand halo that I was talking about. I want to go to the US and I want to go to Harvard, that kind of thinking, without enough understanding of the opportunities that really exist. There are wonderful schools that exist in Europe, in Asia now, even in Africa, if you look at University of Cape Town, for example. And students don't tend to think about those schools, and they tend to be locked a little bit about this schools that were important in the past. They're still great schools. But as a result, they restrict their choices. So why should a student in India, for example, only be thinking about an MBA in the US, but not be thinking about a European MBA, maybe a one-year MBA, a specialized master's? What's wrong with SMU in Singapore, or NUS in Singapore, HKU, even Tsinghua in China, etc.? So that's a challenge, I think, because it creates a set of blinkers. There's obviously the issues related to cost. Those are real. There are issues related to visas and work permits and the ability to pay back loans, which are limiting factors. But the barriers are coming down. The relative cost compared to earning levels is moderating.
And what are some of the initiatives and programs that GMAC offers to help students navigate the admissions process and make informed decisions?
So, GMAC, if you look at us 10 years ago, we were essentially a one-way organ. We were a gatekeeper, right? Our primary product at that point in time, about 96% of our revenues was the GMAT exam. And the GMAT exam was all about, you want to come to my business school, I'm going to put this, jump through this particular hoop, if you will. It's an important hoop, by the way, but it was seen as a gatekeeper.
Correct.
The most important change we made in the last decade is become actually much more a student-facing organization. So we now, as an organization, on MBA.com, businessbecause.com, the business tours, the MBA tour company. All of these are initiatives designed to reach out to students and try to establish this Shadi.com kind of Match.com kind of mechanism, where we look at students and their interests and the capabilities of schools and try to give a student options. Because it may be useful. It's kind of academically interesting to know that Stanford or Harvard or one of the great schools got ranked number one in the world. But if that's beyond your capabilities or your means, it's not very relevant to you, because you're never going to go there.
Sure.
What's important is what's number one for you. What's your personal business school ranking listing, and which are the ones that you should go to? And that's really what a lot of the work that GMAC has been doing is becoming that matchmaking organization.
Amazing. What a powerful statement that, what is number one for you and not what is number one in the world. Thank you. That's a great response. The next question that I have, Sangeet, is what role has technology played in helping GMAC, offer the right kind of choices to students across the world?
Well, hugely, Ashutosh. I mean, obviously, I guess in any industry, I would think about it in maybe a number of levels. So one is, of course, in delivering our primary products, which is the evaluations. In the good old days when I took the GMAT, I went to a physical center and filled out little bubbles and forms,
little black dots.
All that kind of stuff. Now, of course, everything is delivered online, delivered electronically. But what that's enabled is a much richer experience because we use computational power at the back of it to create adapted tests. So no two students gets exactly the same exam. It moves based on your capabilities. It's much a richer experience as a result of it. We get a lot more data. And then, of course, as we move through the pandemic, the delivery of online tests, etc., there's been a lot tied up with it. The second level is outreach. I was talking about these 2 million students around the world. How do you reach these students around the world? You couldn't actually in the good old days. But with technology, there's so many rich interactions we can create, whether it's our websites, it's our webinars, it's our interactive sessions, etc. So that's been very exciting, of course. And the data that we get as a result of it and the ability to create those personalized recommendations would never have been possible without data. So we couldn't become Match.com or Shadi.com without the use of technology.
Well said. Well said.
I remember. Of course,
go ahead.
Education, education itself has changed dramatically as a result of technology. There's not a program in the world that doesn't have a technology component, which is delivered online. So it's been transformative.
Absolutely. I remember in 1977 when I was writing the GMAT, it was all snail mail. And you'd keep waiting every day for the postman to come with the little envelope to see when your next test was. But Sangeet, moving on, in an increasingly globalized world, how does GMAC work towards promoting diversity and inclusion in graduate management education?
Yeah, that's incredibly important. And actually, last year, it was my last year in office, one of the things we did, which I was proud of, is that we did the first ever global report on diversity in graduate management education, where we looked at population groups in schools, and it was sort of an eye-opener about what was going on. So one part is data, is educating people, obviously, as a result of it. But diversity starts at home. So to be truly to promote diversity, we've got to be diverse as an organization. And I think I was very proud that we had, we're an organization that's based in the US. I mean, I'm originally from India. My head of products was an African-American woman. My chief marketing officer was a Spanish-American. My head of students, Spanish-American woman, or rather Spanish woman, I shouldn't say Spanish-American. Our head of student recruitment was a Chinese American woman. So, we started with being diverse ourselves. But in promoting diversity outbound, you've got to have a couple of principles. One is you've got to make certain that you're fair in the way, because we are an evaluation company. So we've got to evaluate things which are in a fair and transparent sort of manner. So that's incredibly important for us to end up doing. And the reality is, as you know, Ashutosh, talent is evenly distributed across the world, but opportunity is not.
Correct.
And so what we have to make certain is that we expose as much opportunity as possible for people all around the world of different racial groups, of different classes, of different socioeconomic backgrounds, so that more and more opportunity is evenly distributed. And we are a long way from that. I think the whole world is a long way from that, but that's a driving factor that's been, if you come into our offices, it's etched in glass, right? And as you walk in, it says our vision statement, where we talk about connecting talent with connecting talent and aspirations with opportunity.
Wow.
That's what we've been trying to do, is collect talented individuals. And the talented individuals everywhere. Maybe not everybody's got the same aspirations, but a lot of them do. And then you connect them with opportunity. That's really essentially what we do. We're not a testing organization.
Yeah,
we're
absolutely.
a connecting organization.
Well said. And therefore, my logical next question is that you've spoken about how you support a lot of students. How does GMAC support management schools in not only getting, but retaining top talent from diverse backgrounds?
Well, one is in building the student pipeline. So we build the pipeline, which schools sort of, we create the pond where the schools are fishing, if you will. And if our pipeline is not diverse, then management education will not be diverse. So one of the things we have to make certain is that we build into our pipeline, our pool, students from across the world, men and women, people from different socioeconomic classes, different races, etc. And that's an important piece of what we do. And perhaps the most important thing about what we do, we don't control business schools' admission decisions, but we do provide them with the pool of people from which they make a business school decision. Now, if they want to go in one direction or the other direction, so be it.
Absolutely.
But that's the biggest thing that we do. The second is education. On both sides, to students about the opportunities available to them, and to schools about the benefits of having a diverse classroom.
When I was reading and preparing for my conversation with you, I was wondering, GMAC is such a unique organization. You're supporting students, you're supporting schools, and I'm sure you're also keeping track of what the employers are looking for. So my question is, how does GMAC stay up to date with the needs and expectations of employers?
Well, it's a moving target, as you can always imagine, and it's a very important question. It's an incredibly important question, because in providing that opportunity to students, the business school is a means to an end, right? It's not an end by itself.
Correct.
The end is a career.
Absolutely.
So we can't attract students unless we can point that where is this going for you, and so we have a couple of programs that end up giving us some insight about what's happening. One is, of course, we are a global organization. We operate across the world. We have teams on the ground in all regions of the world. And that's an informal process of feedback. Perhaps more formal process of feedback is our conference programs, where we do a variety of conferences around the world, which attracts employers, and we learn from that. We also have a panel, actually, of over 1,000 recruiters from around the world who we talk to on a regular basis, and we publish every year a global business school employment report, which again informs business schools about what recruiters are looking for. So hopefully they can adapt their programs accordingly.
Correct. Well said. So time for one more question, Sangeet, and this is for the thousands and thousands of people who will listen to our conversation around the world. What would you say are 3 lessons you would give to prospective students considering pursuing a management education?
Well, that's a big and loaded question.
Absolutely.
I think the first I would do is focus on the outcomes. As part of this job over the last 10 years, maybe I've sort of personally coached maybe a couple of hundred students who are considering a business school, and children of friends and stuff like that. And one thing that strikes me is how much the focus is on the entry point and not the exit point. People say, I want to do an MBA, and I want to do an MBA here. And I say, my first question is, why? What do you hope to get out of it? And answering that question, where do you want to work? What location, what geography? what industry, where do you see yourselves 10 years after the MBA, not your first job in the MBA. If you can identify that, you actually end up widening the opportunity. This brand straitjacket that I talk about actually goes away in many cases because you find that there are different choices that you will end up making.
Well said.
So that I think is an incredibly important area to focus on. The other thing is your business school is going to be there for the next 40 to 50 years for you. That's the starting point of an incredible journey. You got to be careful to get the balance between specialization and generalization, right? And I, again, worry a little bit that we are getting, because we are focused on the job, and a more specialized degree is more likely to lead to a job immediately. We tend to think in narrow sort of terms, But what's the value of becoming a ninja in data analytics and Python and R when its cousin AI is probably going to be doing the data analytics for you out into the future? And the job of the future is not about coding in Python.
Correct.
It's about being able to ask AI the right questions.
Correct.
Which is a different set of skills. It requires more philosophy than computer science.
Absolutely.
So you got to be a little bit of a generalist and a little bit flexible in your feet, because your business degree is the start of a 40-year journey, is not only about getting the job 2 years down the road.
Great advice. Great advice. And Sangeet, on that note, and your amazing pieces of advice, which is focused on the outcome, I think this is so important for young people to think about. And the second one you said was get a balance between specialization and generalization, because think of what you could be doing in a 40-year journey rather than the here and now on what is the immediate gratification that you could get because of your degree. Thank you so much, Sangeet, first of all, for getting back in touch with you after a long period of time. Thank you for talking to me about your journey. Thank you for talking about the Graduate Management Admission Council and the amazing work it is doing in supporting not just students and schools, but also getting a lot of feedback from employers. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website, www.tbcy.in, to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.